Welcome to Life Stories, where the quietest voices often carry the loudest truths. Imagine a 7-year-old girl standing in a crowded room full of family, wearing a sparkly gold dress, and no one sees her. Not really. Not the way a child deserves to be seen. Now imagine she steps forward, lifts a small box, and says one sentence that shatters everything her family has been pretending to be for years. This is not just a story about family. It's about what happens when silence becomes survival, when love demands more than blood, and when a child teaches the adults in the room how to finally tell the truth. If you've ever questioned your place at the table, or wondered what it really means to belong, this story is for you. Let me take you back to where it all began. Ellie stood just behind the living room archway, her tiny hands clutched around a small red gift box that didn't sparkle, didn't hum, didn't demand attention. Her gold dress shimmered faintly in the glow of the fireplace, but no one noticed. Laughter rose and fell like waves in the holiday chatter. Champagne flutes clinked, plates scraped, someone popped another bottle. She was 7, but tonight she was more ghost than girl. Across the room, Grandma Carol, impeccably dressed in navy cashmere and heels no one her age should still be wearing, held court from her ivory armchair. She was radiant in that sharp, brittle way of women who need to be adored to survive. Her voice, refined and commanding, sliced through conversations with effortless authority. "Ethan, sweetie, come open yours," she chirped, and her youngest grandson bounded up to her like a puppy. The envelope he tore open was thick with bills. The room erupted in applause. Ellie didn't move, she just watched. Next was Chloe, the crown jewel, blonde, delicate, and 10. Carol's little star. She unwrapped a glittering iPad and a silver bracelet. Carol pressed a kiss to her temple. "Only the best for my girls," she cooed. Then Carol turned toward Ellie. A pause. She reached beside her and held up a small paper bag, creased, wrinkled at the top. "Ellie," she said, her voice softer, almost hesitant. "This is for you, sweetheart. Didn't want you to feel completely left out." The silence that followed wasn't dramatic. It was worse. It was casual. Ellie stood, walked slowly across the room, and accepted the bag. Inside was a lavender-scented candle from a discount store. No ribbon, no tag, no trace of warmth. Rachel, Ellie's mom, felt it like a punch to the throat. She'd wrapped thoughtful gifts for every person in this room. She'd ironed matching pajamas, baked extra cookies, rehearsed her smiles. All for this. All for nothing. Across the room her husband Jack sat motionless, his jaw clenched so tightly she thought his teeth might crack. He didn't look at his mother. He didn't look at Ellie. He looked at the floor. Later, in the kitchen while the others laughed over pie and punch, Rachel cornered him. "Say something," she whispered. "She called her your girl, like she doesn't even belong to me." Jack's eyes didn't waver. "She remembers the box." Rachel stared. "She what?" "I gave it to her months ago," Jack said. "Told her she could give it to my mom if she ever made her feel like an outsider again. It was her choice." "You're serious?" She decided tonight was the night. And Rachel realized her daughter had made a decision, a quiet one, but one with weight, the kind of decision children shouldn't have to make. Back home, Ellie sat on the edge of her bed brushing her doll's hair. The candle from Grandma Carol sat on her nightstand, unlit. Next to it, the red box. "Do you think she'll be mad?" Ellie asked quietly. Jack knelt beside her. "Maybe. But that's not your burden." Ellie looked up. "Can I still give it to her?" Jack nodded. "It's yours to give. You've always had that right." The next morning, Ellie got dressed like it was the first day of school. She asked for the gold dress again. She wanted her curls redone. She chose the glitter headband she wore the day the adoption papers were signed. She didn't say it was for luck. She didn't need to. Carol's home was its usual museum of holiday perfection. Gold ornaments glinted on the towering tree. The table was set like a magazine spread, but beneath the gleam, something had shifted. Brunch passed with practiced politeness. Carol complimented Chloe's dress twice. She didn't mention Ellie's. When dessert came out, Ellie stood up. It took a few seconds for anyone to notice. She walked to the head of the table and placed the red box in front of Carol. "Grandma," she said, steady and clear. "Dad told me to give this to you if you ever ignored me again." The room froze. Carol blinked as if she hadn't understood. "What's this, darling?" she said with a smile stretched too tight. Ellie didn't answer. She simply returned to her seat. Carol peeled the red paper slowly, theatrically, as if still trying to perform, but the smile died the moment she opened the box. On top was a framed photo, Jack cradling a frosting-covered Ellie on the day of her adoption. The words "Day One Dad" glittered beneath it in gold ink. Below it, an envelope. Carol's fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside were the legal adoption documents. Jack's name in bold beside father, the judge's seal. Undeniable. Beneath them, a handwritten letter. As Carol read it, her face drained of color. The words were silent to the room, but not to her. "If you're reading this, it means you've hurt my daughter again. Not my stepdaughter. Not Rachel's girl. Mine. If you cannot love Ellie as your granddaughter, you cannot claim to love me. She belongs here. Always has. If you can't see that, you're no longer welcome in our lives." Carol dropped the letter like it burned her fingers, and then she screamed. Not a cry, not a sob, a scream, guttural and sharp, cutting through the tinsel and fake smiles. "You dare humiliate me like this, in front of the whole family?" she shrieked. Jack stood, calm, steady. "We didn't humiliate you, Mom. You did that to yourself." She pointed at Rachel, spitting the words. "This is her. She's poisoned you." Rachel stood too. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't flinch. "Ellie gave you a gift, Carol, a chance to see her. You chose not to." The room was quiet but cracking. Ellie didn't cry. She didn't shrink. She watched, and in her gaze was something terrifyingly adult. Clarity. Jack reached for her hand. "Let's go." They didn't look back. Have you ever watched a child realize they were being treated like an outsider? What would you do if someone made your child feel invisible in their own family? Ellie gave her grandmother a chance to see the truth. What came next tore the family in two and rebuilt something better from the wreckage. The drive home was quiet, but not heavy. Not like before. Jack kept one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting loosely on Rachel's leg. In the back seat, Ellie stared out the window, her small fingers still laced around the edge of the seatbelt. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The silence didn't come from sadness. It came from release. It wasn't until they were back in their living room, the tree still glowing softly in the corner, that Ellie broke the quiet. "Are we still a family without Grandma?" she asked. Rachel turned toward her, heart aching at the question. Jack beat her to the answer. "A real one," he said simply. That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She lay awake long after Jack's breathing even beside her, thinking of everything that had led to this. Years of smiling through clenched teeth, of baking casseroles she knew would be criticized, of dressing Ellie in her nicest clothes only to watch her fade into the wallpaper of a home that had never truly made space for her. She thought she was doing it for Ellie, for tradition, for family. But she realized now it had been for survival. Hers. What haunted her wasn't Carol's scream or the stunned silence that followed. It was the way Ellie had looked as they walked out of that house. Not proud, not defiant, just free. And Rachel felt something shift inside her. A grief she hadn't allowed herself to name. Not grief for Carol, but for the part of her that had believed love had to be earned through endurance. 2 days later, the silence broke. It came in the form of a text from Carol. "You poisoned him. I hope you're proud." Rachel stared at the message. No hello, no apology. Just a final wound, sharp and precise. She showed Jack, who read it and deleted it without a word. She expected anger. He only said, "She made her choice." But that wasn't the last message. Carol didn't stop at them. She started calling Jack's sister, posting photos online with cryptic captions. Some people forget where they came from. Blood should matter more than paperwork. And then she crossed the line. Chloe's mom, Jack's sister, texted Rachel late one night. A screenshot. It was Carol. "I just think it's important Chloe knows the difference between real family and temporary attachments." Rachel felt cold. Her first instinct was fury. But then, heartbreak. This wasn't just about Ellie. Carol was trying to unmake her. The next morning, Rachel sat on the edge of Ellie's bed while she tied her shoelaces. Ellie glanced up, sensing something. "What's wrong?" she asked. Rachel swallowed. "Nothing you did? Did Grandma say something?" Rachel paused, startled. "Why do you ask that?" Because I can feel it, Ellie said quietly, like when someone closes a door without slamming it. You still hear it. Rachel looked at her daughter, so perceptive, so small, and already so familiar with rejection. We're not going to see her for a while, Rachel said. Ellie nodded. Okay. You're not mad, Ellie considered it. No. I think she just doesn't know how to love me, and I don't want to keep hoping she will. Rachel's throat closed. You shouldn't have to be that wise, Ellie shrugged. You shouldn't have to be that tired. And that was the twist. Rachel realized the wound in her daughter was no longer fresh. It had become part of how Ellie saw the world, and that they didn't fight for her to see it differently. It would harden. Permanently. That night, she sat with Jack at the kitchen table. There was no wine, no celebration, just a laptop and a long list of contacts. One by one, they reached out to family. Not to plead, but to draw a line. Ellie is our daughter. She belongs. If that's uncomfortable for you, we respect your decision, but we won't be part of any version of family that doesn't see her as whole. Some responded with warmth, others with silence, a few with the kind of passive-aggressive distance that says more than words ever could, but the message was clear. They weren't shrinking anymore. A week later, something unexpected happened. A small package arrived, addressed to Ellie. Inside was a silver bracelet with a tiny heart charm. No logo, no brand. Just a handwritten note. I'm sorry Grandma was mean. You're my cousin forever. I picked this with my allowance. Chloe. Ellie read it twice, then slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. She didn't ask if she could wear it, she just did. That night, she fell asleep with it on her arm, fingers curled around it like an anchor. Rachel stood at the doorway, watching her daughter breathe. She's healing, Jack said from behind. She's changing, Rachel whispered. And I don't want to miss it. She had spent so long trying to keep things intact, holiday photos, traditions, the illusion of a family. But now something better was taking root. Not loud, not perfect, but real. Because love wasn't a performance. It was a decision. What would you do if the people meant to love your child made them feel like a guest in their own story? Carol had tried to keep her place in the family by pretending nothing had changed. But the truth? Everything had, and the next time she reached out, the rules would be different. Spring arrived quietly. There were no more holiday invites, no brunches, no awkward group photos to pose for. Carol didn't reach out again. Not a message, not a call. Just the silence that once would have stung, but now felt like a door finally closed. Rachel wasn't sure if that emptiness would feel like grief. At first, maybe it did. There were moments, silly ones like Ellie's dance recital or Jack's birthday, where she'd glance at her phone, half expecting a "hope it went well" message that never came. But something else began to grow in that quiet space. Peace. It showed up in little things. Jack leaving work early to make dinner with Ellie, Ellie laughing without glancing around to see who was watching. Saturday mornings filled with mismatched pancakes and inside jokes instead of stiff formalities. Rachel had once believed family meant tradition. Now she understood. It meant protection. One warm Saturday in May, Ellie stood in front of her school auditorium, nervously clutching a note card in her hand. It was Family Appreciation Day. Each student had written a short piece about someone in their life who made them feel safe, seen, loved. Rachel and Jack sat in the second row, hands intertwined. When Ellie stepped up to the microphone, she didn't look at the audience. She looked at them. My family is small, she began, voice clear and calm. It doesn't have to be big to be strong. My dad doesn't have the same blood as me, but he has something more important. He picked me. My mom always says I'm brave, but I think she's the bravest because she never let me feel like I didn't matter, even when it was hard. Rachel felt her throat close. Jack reached for her hand again. But Ellie wasn't done. I used to think something was wrong with me, she continued, because one person in my family didn't treat me like I belonged. But now I know that not everyone gets to decide who I am. I do, and I choose to be proud of where I come from. I choose to be proud of my name. I choose to be proud of my family. Because they chose me first. She stepped down to a round of quiet applause. Rachel couldn't move. She felt tears slipping silently down her face. Not because of pain, but because of pride so large it felt like it might break her open. After the assembly, a teacher stopped them in the hallway. Ellie's piece was something else, she said, hand over her heart. You're raising a very special girl. Rachel smiled. We're lucky she's raising us too. That night, they celebrated with pizza and too many root beer floats. Ellie wore her silver bracelet, the one Chloe had sent months ago, and danced around the living room with wild abandon. It was the kind of night no one took a picture of, because no one wanted to look away long enough. Later, as Rachel tucked her into bed, Ellie whispered, "Do you think Grandma misses me?" Rachel paused. "Maybe," she said gently, "but missing someone and being ready to love them right aren't always the same thing." Ellie nodded. "I don't want to be missed, I want to be chosen." Rachel kissed her forehead. "You are, every single day." Weeks passed. Then one afternoon a padded envelope arrived in the mail. It was addressed to Jack Henderson. The return address wasn't familiar. Inside, neatly folded, was a letter. And a check. The letter was from Carol's lawyer. Carol had been diagnosed with advanced stage cancer. She wasn't asking to see Jack. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. But she wanted him to know she had revised her will. There was a small fund in Ellie's name, for college, for whatever she wanted. No note, no apology, just a transaction. Rachel sat at the kitchen table reading the letter twice. Jack didn't say anything. Finally, Rachel looked up. "What are you thinking?" Jack exhaled. That she couldn't say it, even now. Rachel nodded. But maybe that was the best she could do. They didn't tell Ellie everything right away. Not the diagnosis, not the money, just that her grandmother had sent something for her. When Ellie opened the envelope, she didn't ask about the amount. She didn't even look at the check. She read the part with her name, then folded the letter quietly. "Do I have to write back?" she asked. "No," Jack said softly. "Not if you don't want to." Ellie nodded. "Then I just want to say thank you in my heart. That feels better." She stood, slipped the letter back into the envelope, and placed it in the drawer beside her bracelet. Rachel watched her, stunned by the grace of a girl who had every right to be bitter, but instead chose to be whole. That summer, they didn't plan big vacations. They built a treehouse in the backyard instead. Ellie painted the walls with stars and wrote "Chosen Place" in glitter across the ceiling. It became her hideout, her reading nook, her peace. And when fall came around and school started again, no one brought up the past, because the past didn't own them anymore. In October, they received a final letter. Carol had passed. There was no funeral invite, no message from anyone, just silence. But this time, it didn't sting. Rachel stood by the window that night, watching leaves tumble across the lawn. "She's gone," she said aloud, not expecting a reply. Ellie, now curled on the couch with a book, looked up. "Did she ever see me, really?" Rachel thought about it. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But you saw yourself, and that's more powerful." Jack joined her by the window. "And we saw you too. Always." Ellie smiled. "Then I'm okay." And she was. They all were. Because family isn't about who claims you in public. It's about who defends you in private. It's not who shares your past. It's who protects your future. And love, real love, isn't always loud. Sometimes it arrives in a whisper. And sometimes it walks out with you, hand in hand, when no one else stands. How did this story make you feel? If it touched your heart, tell us why. Comment 100 if this story meant something to you. Let us know what country you're watching from. Share this video with someone who believes in chosen family. Thank you for watching Life Stories.